Hey everyone! Today we're really going to get this bread with this multi-purpose dough recipe. The nice thing about this dough is that you can make all sorts of things with it. From flatbreads to pizza to bread rolls, it's even good for calzones and empanadas. Now, let's get started. We're going to need 1 kilogram of all-purpose flour, 750 milliliters of warm water, around 105 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 Celsius, 5 grams of active dry yeast, 15 grams of salt, and a tiny drop of honey. A pinch of sugar would work fine here too. First, we're going to want to bloom or activate our active dry yeast. Take 50 milliliters of the water and add the yeast. I like adding a little drop of honey or a pinch of sugar whenever I'm working with dry yeast. I feel like it helps jumpstart them a little better from their dormant state. Give it a stir and let it sit aside at room temperature for about 15 minutes. While you're waiting, why not leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think about bread. After 15 minutes, you should notice that it's become cloudy and or foamy. That's a good thing. It means it's active and alive. This is what will leaven your bread. Now, let's add our salt to our flour and mix it thoroughly. Then the rest of the ingredients, the water and the yeast. Get in there and mix it up until it forms a dough. I like starting with a spatula, then moving to my hands once the dough comes together a little bit more. You can also do this in a mixer using a dough hook. For the small amount of thought and effort put into this dough, the results really are great. Baking can get pretty involved, and sometimes I just need some easy but delicious bread to go with whatever else I'm making. I like this recipe because it fills that spot really well. The dough can be made into a bunch of things that pair really well with a bunch of other things. It freezes well so it's readily available, and it's basically foolproof. I've already messed it up a few times in this video, and it had little to no effect on the finished product. These are great qualities when you're just trying to make dinner for the typical weeknight. While you're mixing, a little trick for cleaning your hands is to dust them with flour, and then rub them together like Birdman. He's still cool and relevant, right? Yeah, I'm not old. At this point, the dough needs to proof. That means giving the yeast time to work their magic. At least overnight in the refrigerator in this case. When proofing the dough, I like to cover it with a damp cloth, fastened with a rubber band. This prevents it from forming a skin due to the dryness. You can also just use cling film if you want. That's totally fine. Now it's time to proof the dough overnight in the refrigerator. So I'll see you tomorrow. Slowly proofing the dough in the refrigerator overnight like this has several benefits, including developing richer flavors, improving the texture, and just allowing you to have a more flexible baking schedule. Now that our dough is proofed overnight, it's nearly doubled in size, and it's good to work with. Scoop your dough out of the bowl onto a floured surface. It's good to keep extra flour at hand for these next steps so you can dust your hands, tools, and surfaces as needed so everything doesn't stick. Now, let's knead our dough. We need dough because it helps develop gluten structures, which creates the right texture in the bread and allows it to rise when we bake it. We don't want to work the dough too much, because then it'll become too dense and difficult to work with and eat. So once it comes together into one uniform ball like this, it's good to go. Alright, it's time to section our dough. Using a scraper, or a knife, section up your dough. I found that this amount of dough best splits into 8 sections, each section being enough dough for a single meal portion. But if you'd prefer 4 larger loaves of bread, just quarter it, and that's totally fine. To knead each section, fold the dough onto itself until it feels more tightened up, making sure that the seam you've made is on the bottom. This will help prevent the dough from coming apart while it expands during baking. I'm going to use all of these dough balls today, but if I wasn't going to, I would drizzle just a teeny bit of oil on them, then put them into a plastic bag to freeze. The oil will help keep some of the moisture inside the dough while it's frozen, and help stop them from sticking together so much. After they're rolled, we're going to want to let them rest for about an hour or so before we shape into something else. This gives the dough a little time to relax, otherwise the constant working stress will make the dough too chewy and dense. We can learn a lot from dough. At this point, our dough is all ready to work with. Let's start out by making a basic flatbread. It's as easy as flattening it out, whether you use your hands, a rolling pin, or similar object, or both. There's really nothing much more to it. To finish the flatbread, throw it into a pan with a light coating of oil over medium-low heat. Leave it in the pan until it firms up a bit, about 2 minutes, and then you can flip it. You can flip this bread as much as you need until it's got your desired color and crust. The less you cook it, the softer and doughier the texture will be, while cooking it more will make it drier and a little breadier. Once it looks nice and crispy and has a nice bouncy feel to it, it's done. This one I made here is on the bready side, so I'm going to throw a couple ingredients together and make a sandwich. These are also really good to dip into sauces and curries. Now let's make some bread rolls. Just grab one of your dough balls and give it a good kneading, folding it onto itself a couple times and lengthening it out in the process. As you're folding it, you'll start to make a bit of a seam on the dough. It's good to tuck this underneath, as that'll stop it from opening up while it's baking. If you like, you can cut a couple lines in the top for a nice visual, but it's not necessary. And now we're just going to let these rest for about 15 minutes. Brushing them with a little water or milk will help them color a little bit better in the oven, and allowing something like sesame seeds to stick on there too if you wanted. I cooked these for about 25 minutes at 200 degrees Celsius. That's about 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Depending on your oven, they might need a little bit more or less time. Just keep an eye on them. And just like that, some good looking little rolls. These are really good. I ended up eating most of them while they were warm, just with some butter. Now for the pizza de resistance, the pizza crust. Just like the flatbread, roll your dough flat. You can make your dough as thick or thin as you like, depending on how you like your pizza, but consider that it'll change your cooking time a little bit. The dough is going to want to retract back to how it was, but you're in charge here, so use your hands or a rolling pin to force it into compliance. And there we go, a nice thin pizza crust. Now let's carefully move this over to a baking tray. I'll just flop this on here like this. Alright, great. Now let's talk toppings. You can top your pizza however you like, but I'm going to start my base with a little bit of leftover pasta sauce I have. Some mozzarella cheese, some grated Parmesan cheese, some basil from the garden, and some seasonings. After 18 minutes in the oven at 200 degrees Celsius, my pizza came out like this. It probably could have went a little less, but it's still fantastic. It's got a lovely crispy crust to it, it's not soggy at all, and it's actually quite nice for such a basic dough. My favorite part about this pizza is that I didn't have to go to the store to buy anything special for it. I just used things I already had around my kitchen. Flour, canned or jarred tomato products, and cheese are all great products to keep in your kitchen and pantry for this exact reason. They're versatile, they're relatively shelf stable, and they're the foundation for countless dishes. This is a great thing to keep in mind when cooking at home. And there you have it, multi-purpose dough. I hope you learned something or were at least entertained for a little bit. If you enjoyed my video, you can help me make more by liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching.